Loud. Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is my life as a landlord. I'm so pleased you've joined me for today's show. There are so many of you out there who are new to real estate, new to landlording, new to potential renovations, and well, new to looking at foundations. My guest today has over 35 years in foundation repairs, books, key patents, and a reputation as the dirt whisperer, and he has seen it all. He's a residential and commercial landlord himself. Joining us today from Phoenix, Arizona is the dirt whisperer, Bob Brown. Hi, Bob. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So tell us, how did you end up in dirt slash foundation world?
It's a rather circuitous path, I think. When I was going to college at Arizona State University, studying real estate and finance, um, I just I didn't want to work in the bookstore. They don't pay enough, like $5 an hour or something. That was stupid. I'm not going to do that. So I used to just drive around shopping centers and find broken planter curbs, and I'd call up the property manager and I'd say, "Hey, for $500, I'll fix your planter curb here," and they'd say, "Okay," and I'd say, "Great." And I'd go out there 4 or 5 hours and spend $50 on materials and make $500.
Such a deal. Such a deal.
So,
I
so
love
that
it.
that led to concrete repairs in the concrete world, and then eventually that led to foundations. It kind of by osmosis. I was always looking for a better niche, one that people didn't understand as well. I wanted to be able to use my education and experience, besides doing something like concrete, what wasn't all that intellectually challenging, to be honest with you. Uh, and so I've kind of wound myself into foundations eventually.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, what are some of the biggest foundation issues in most homes? Like what are some of the things that you see? Good, bad, and indifferent.
Yeah. Well, okay. So when we're talking about foundations, we have to recognize that all foundations sit on the dirt.
Okay.
I had a friend who said, worked for a big road construction company called Skanska, and he said, all roads are dirt roads. He said, it doesn't matter whether you paint them with asphalt or paint them with concrete, the road itself is dirt. And
I like that.
it's the same with houses. The house sits on the dirt. And if the dirt is not right, the house won't be right. So and there are lots of different kinds of foundations, post-tensioned, conventional slabs, crawl spaces, basements, and lots of variations of all those things. But and some of them are more robust than others, but it still comes down to the dirt.
Gotcha. Well, Bob, you and I have compared notes, and I think that the best way to help provide value to my listeners out there, both in US and Canada, let's talk about navigating the 15 foundation fallacies that you have really streamlined. Where should we start?
I don't know. I mean, pick one that gets your fancy. I don't think we'll have time to do them all. It'll be like drinking from a fire hose. So, one of my favorites is, well, first of all, mistakes that most people make is that they don't realize how complicated soil is, which is why I'm called the dirt whisperer. They think that soil is just this contiguous mass of brown and it's all the same and it's just dirt, right? No, it's really, really complicated. You have geotechnical engineers, and this dirt has lots of layers, and each layer is a different mineral content with different density and different affinities for water, and they're not all exactly parallel. They're fat and they disappear and reappear, and water moves between these layers and does different things at different layers. You could have lots of things going on all at the same time. Okay. And just to give you an example, clays, clay soils, when they get wet, they swell.
Mm.
And if you have sands and gravels and they get wet, they can consolidate. And to make it even more complicated, clays, if you get them too wet, they collapse. So there's a lot of things going on. It can be very complicated. So it's really important to recognize that soils are complicated. That's why you need geotechnical engineers. They're engineers that specialize in soils. And they're the guys you call. Never call a structural engineer. Always call a forensic geotechnical engineer, guys that specialize in existing properties. Okay, so the big mistake that everybody makes right off the bat is they see all these cracks and they think, oh, my house is falling apart. And they Google foundation problems, right? Well, that's the wrong thing to do. Why? Why is that? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the foundation repair companies spend a lot of money being number one on the Google search. And it's not in your best interest to call a foundation repair company. Why is that? Because what they're going to do is they're going to send out a salesman, a 100% commissioned salesman, whose job it is to sell as much as he possibly can. And he's going to be all scientific and kind of sound all official. And, you know, he'll say something like, Mr. Jones, on a scale of 1 to 10, your foundation is like an 8.5. And I'm thinking to myself, what is that? What is that, like the Richter scale of foundation repair? What is that? I never heard of that. It's just the BS scale. There's no 1 to 10 scale. Now there are scales, we can talk about them, but that's not it. Okay. Engineers know what they are. It's tilt and deflection. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, how did you arrive at 8.5? And the answer is always inevitably something like, oh, you know, based on all my years of experience. And then under his breath, he says, and the fact that my kids need braces, you know. I mean, it's just all a bunch of subjective BS. So you don't want to call foundation repair companies. They'll do it for free, but think about this for a minute. If you were really sick, I mean, really, really sick, and I just had this like 2 weeks ago, I had a bad headache and fever, and like I couldn't think straight. I mean, I still don't know what I had, but I got better. But I had it for like 2 weeks and I couldn't shake it. Well, when you're in that bad a shape, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to a pharmaceutical rep and take their advice for free? Or are you going to pay good money and go to a real doctor?
Pay money and go to a real doctor.
That's kind of your
A
choice with your house.
specialist.
You can pay money and get a good forensic engineer, or you can get it for free from a salesman.
Right.
So one of the big myths is the foundation repair sales guys are full of misinformation. And one of my favorites is, oh, don't worry. When we pull permits for your house, we're going to have our engineer check it out and make sure that everything's good.
No.
False. Totally and completely 100% false. It's a bald-faced lie. Why is that? Well, the reason is because engineers, if they don't gather the data themselves, or somebody that's their direct employee gathers the data, and they opine and make recommendations on data that's gathered by somebody else, not them, they can lose their license.
Mm.
And they're not gonna make that mistake. They're not gonna do that.
No.
Engineers are very risk averse. They're just not gonna do it. They're just not going to. And so what they're going to do is they're going, you know, what is the permit? The permit, you have to get an engineer sealed for a permit, right? I mean, what is that, right? Okay, I'll tell you what it is. So the jurisdictions, cities and counties, they require a spacing plan. A spacing plan. Now, almost all foundation repairs require what we call piers. Some are push piers, helical piers, different kinds of piers that go down in the ground, you know, bypass all the soft soils and raise up the house that's lowered, right? Well, you don't want those piers too far apart or that house will sag between them, right? So the permit that the cities require a spacing calculation to calculate how far the piers can be apart before it becomes a problem. Now that an engineer can do, you just give them the house plan and you say, here's my piers, you know, and the calculation, the engineer calculates WL squared over 8, you know, not a hard calculation. And voila, he puts his calculations in there and they turn it into the city. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that you could have the piers on the wrong side of the house. You could have too many, too few. You might not even need piers at all. It might be all upheaval from from expansive clays, and Piers won't fix that at all.
Mm,
It'd be a total waste of $80,000 for a problem that doesn't even get addressed properly. And the permitting process does nothing to correct for that, nothing whatsoever, nothing. It'll sail right through and they'll give you your permit and you go do the work. And then 5 years later, when it starts cracking again, you call the foundation repair contractor out and you say, hey, come honor your lifetime warranty. Ha ha, lifetime warranty. They're not worth the paper they're written on. Um, and he comes out and says, they send out their really experienced guy and he says, oh, well, uh, these cracks, they're all from expansive heave. And it says right here in our contract that Piers can't fix expansive heave. So have a nice life. And then the homeowner, if he's really smart, will say, hey, wait. If it's all expansive heave, then didn't you like misdiagnose it wrong in the first place? And the contractor says, hey, what do we know? We're not engineers. We're just dumb contractors. And of course, that's not what they say when they come to your house the first time. The salesman who's getting paid a commission is going to say all kinds of things like, oh, I'm way smarter than an engineer. I've been doing this a long time. Those dumb engineers, they live in ivory towers. They don't know what's going on. I'm down in the trenches every day. I know what needs to be done. I learned from Joe, who been doing it for 35 years, and he learned from Harry, who'd been doing it for 35 years. And under my breath, I'm thinking, yeah, and all those guys learned from each other wrong.
right. Now, Bob, what about homeowners insurance? There's always some kind of a thought that if the foundation has a problem or fails or something, that homeowners insurance will cover it. What do you think?
It's a tough battle. Insurance policies have what they call an earth movement exclusion, which means,
Mm,
and I don't know how they get away with this, but they've gotten all the states to agree to it, all the state boards that regulate insurance or whatever, which basically says if the problem in your house is caused from soil movement, we exclude it. Now, if you can prove that it's from like a pipe break and it's a sudden and catastrophic event, you got a 50-50 chance. I actually, on one of my rental houses, got insurance to pay for it. But I'm in the business. I know how it works. I got brought out the right engineers, gave the reports to the insurance companies, and they're like, yeah. I had the leak detection company come out and say, yeah, we
mhm.
detected leaks in these three places, and then the engineers would say, yeah, these leaks, they caused the problem, and I got insurance to pay for it. But the average person doesn't have those kinds of connections and skills and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's a tough battle. But one of
Yeah.
the things that helps is having a baseline floor elevation survey. Now, what is that? So, floor elevation survey is when you come out with a manometer. Now, a manometer is a tank with a hose, and on the other end of the hose, like a 100-foot hose, is a stick with a ruler. And you take that and you move it around 5 feet on center all throughout the house. And as you move it, the water comes to a level, and that tells you if that spot's high or low. And then you go to the next spot and you record all those, and you can put them into a software called Spatial Vision.
Mm,
And that prints out like a 3D topo map, kind of like a mountain map, with the topo lines.
sure.
And it's colorized and everything, and you can see it in 3D, and you can see, okay, it's flat, and then it drops off over here or whatever. Okay, so if you have one of those with a baseline, and then you have a problem 5 years down the road, a pipe breaks or something. Now you have something that says, okay, it used to be like this. And then after the pipe break, it kind of looked like this. And then the insurance company is going to be like, yeah, I think he's got us there. So it really helps to have that.
Gotcha. Well, if when someone discovers or they think they might have an issue and they shouldn't Google and then call a foundation repair company that ultimately results in their salesperson, they need to call, what was it, geotechnical engineer? How do they even find one in their area?
Well, it's really hard. So
Okay.
on my website, Foundation Repair Secrets, I have a directory and it's free. I don't even charge anybody to be on it. And the average person can go look at it and whatever. Because I got a million calls from people saying, hey, I read your book. My cat's getting crazy. I read your book and I'd like to, find a forensic geotechnical engineer, but I've been looking and I can't find any. So I did a bunch of research, found some people, at least that purported on their websites to do residential forensics, and put it in there so that for every state you can try to find somebody. Now, I would love feedback. If somebody says, oh, this guy's not doing it, okay, let me know. I'll take him off the list. Or hey, I found this really good guy. Oh, cool. Let me know. I'll get his address and get his name in there, and because I'm just trying to help people. That's all.
No kidding. Now, some of my listeners are in Canada. I know you've got all 50 states there. Anybody in Canada that can help maybe?
I do have a one engineer that covers Canada.
Okay, beautiful. Okay. Well, you've got, my listeners are landlords of different experience types, maybe different biological ages, but at the essential core of foundations, what should someone ask a foundation repair contractor, somebody that's going to do something, right? That you take your forensic geotechnical report and you go and here's what I need done. But how can you believe anybody?
Right, right.
Somebody,
Well,
right?
it's very, very difficult for the average homeowner to negotiate and navigate with these guys. And I highly recommend that the engineer that does the report that says, here's the problem and here's the solution, here's what to do, put in 5 piers here, or, fix the drainage or whatever needs to be done. Okay. Hire that same engineer to be your special inspector. Now,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not going to be cheap, but it's going to be right. And we sort of talked about these, lifetime warranties. Everybody in the foundation repair business gives these lifetime warranties. They're not worth anything. They have so many loopholes and get out of jail free cards. They're worthless. They're absolutely worthless.
Right.
But what does count is if you have an engineer seal that says, this is the problem I discovered. Here's the solution. And then oh yeah, and here's the contractor who did what my plan, and I supervised him to make sure he did it right. And at the end of the job, I can seal that it was done per my intent. Now that's worth something. That is, because frankly, I mean, like one of the loopholes is, oh yeah, well, the only lifetime warranty we actually really come to is the fact that the peers themselves won't settle. If we design it wrong, if the salesman designs the piers on the wrong side of the house, or comes up with a bogus plan, we don't guarantee against that. Uh,
Right.
and the engineer, I mean, doesn't give a guarantee like that, but he's going to get it right. I mean, the salesman could get it wrong easily, easily. I mean, I owned a foundation repair company for 35 years, and I owned an engineering company for many years, not quite 35, but a lot. And so I know how it is done. I had 20 sales guys working for me, and I had engineers. So I know how it's being done in the industry, and I know how it should be done.
Mm,
And the sales guys that are going out to diagnose this stuff, most of them, they talk a big game. They're very confident and all that stuff, but they don't really know much. I mean, the most they learn is from a 3-day seminar put on by their supplier. I mean, compare that to 5 years and 3 years of apprenticeship and two very difficult exams that engineers take. No comparison.
right. Well, here's a very simple question for just a homeowner in general, regardless of, landlording and rental, and you're a landlord yourself.
Yep.
If you see a crack in a foundation, does that mean that something needs to be done, or is that
No,
just sort of
no.
expected?
Well, we often say in the concrete world, there's two kinds of concrete that's cracked and concrete that's going to crack. Uh,
Nice.
Cracks in concrete are ubiquitous, and cracks, and you're going to get movement from soils. If you have any kind of clays, you're going to get movement. That's just that comes with the territory. So, like if you're in Dallas, every house has problems, right?
Mm,
Uh, you know, uh, Maybe in Phoenix it's a lot less, but other parts of the country, there's depends on where you're at and what you got and all that, right? But somewhere between those two extremes. Uh, but the fact of the matter is, you're going to see cracks, and the house is going to move a little bit, and the sheetrock is very rigid. It's going to crack. Does that mean the house is ready to fall apart? Absolutely not.
No.
I've been looking at foundation and foundation issues, and I've only seen two houses that qualified for structural deficiency in like 35 years. Uh,
That's pretty good odds.
I mean, that, they had moved 12 inches,
Wow.
and still, I mean, in one of those, we had engineers sat down for a 4 hour meeting inside the house. They weren't worried the house was going to fall in on them. So, you know,
Yeah.
um, you know, that's one of the tricks that these foundation repair companies do is they're very sophisticated. They don't want to come out and, blatantly say, "Hey, your house is going to fall down on you," because they know people are not that stupid, right? But they're going to say it in, very, sophisticated ways that you don't want these problems coming back forever, and you want to fix it for a lifetime, and you know, and they go through all this stuff, and they feed into the fears of people. But cracks are common. You're going to get cracks. Those are what we call serviceability issues. They're
Mm.
not structural issues. They're serviceability. They might even just be cosmetic, which is
Mm.
the third tier up, right? Um,
Right.
and
Right.
it might be from soils getting wet that have clays in them and heaving up. If you're in a drier climate, you have more odds of that happening than settlement. You're in a wetter climate, then it's kind of the opposite. But
Gotcha.
uh, I mean, you're going to get cracks, and it might be all done moving. I mean, if anybody other than a forensic geotechnical engineer tries to opine about, well, this is going to continue moving, or it's all done moving, or whatever, unless they're a forensic geotechnical engineer, they're just loading you with BS because they don't know. They're only guessing. The only ones that can tell you that are forensic geotechnical engineers.
Technical. That's amazing. I'm here in Hawaii, and talk about seismic activity here. Lots of clay, lots of blue rock, and lots of movement in general. And so there is a lot of tie downs and engineering, and anything that's got a retaining wall, or a building. We just built some multifamily condos, and I was heavily involved in the construction. And again, it was high engagement with the engineers, just as you suggest, of making sure that if you have a forensic geotechnical engineer, and then hire them as your special inspector, because then there's a double engagement, right? And making sure
Right.
that it's right there. And it was money well spent, because that's exactly what we did.
Exactly right. It's money well spent. That's exactly the way. But let me give you another scenario that happens
Please.
all the time. So now you decide to hire the contractor, right? Halfway through the job, he comes to you and says, "Oh, Mr. Jones, there's an unknown condition. We need to add 5 more piers. You need to come up with another 12 grand."
Right.
What? You know,
Right.
and then you're thinking, well, oh, wait a minute. I don't know if I believe this guy. And maybe you might push back and go, "No, no, I don't, no, just do the original contract." And then he says, "Well, but if we don't do this, I can't give you a lifetime warranty." Oh,
Right.
no. you know, as, "Oh, well, please take my money."
Yeah.
And if you have a special inspector on the job, then the contractor comes to him and says, "Hey, Mr. Engineer, we need to add more piers." And the engineer says, "Well, I'm the one that came up with this plan. So, Mr. Hogbreath, explain this to me. How did I get this wrong? You think you're smarter than me?"
Or
Uh,
did something actually change? Did something actually
I mean,
change?
it
And then the
could be
engineer's right
possible.
there.
But
Yeah.
he's going to have to justify it, and he's going to think, 2 or 3 times before coming up with some sort of BS plan with an engineer that's going to see right through it if it's full of hogwash, right?
Yeah.
So that's another way that you can get protected. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 ways that working with a good engineer on a foundation repair project will save itself many, many times. Yeah, you'll have to spend a little bit of money up front, but hey,
Money well spent.
you might not even have to put any piers it on. I mean, you might be saving $80,000.
Right.
That's a lot of money saved, for spending maybe $1,500 up front, right?
That's true. Absolutely true. Well, Bob, you mentioned a software program about leveling, and what was it called? Spatial
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 vision. That's
spatial
right.
vision. What other techie things are in the works, or that you use now, that you really enjoy? Because you kind of lit up when you said that. What else do you
Yeah.
use software wise that?
Well, Spatial
Foundation
Data
repair.
is a software system that we came up with years ago when we had our foundation repair and engineering business, and now anybody can use it. It's just like $44 a month. It's not a lot of money.
Cool.
And the other thing that's cool is that we've kind of hooked up with a device called a smart level, which is a kind of a one of these tanks, with the hose and all that, but it's electronic. And we've got it hooked up so that when you stab it in a corner and hit the button, it automatically puts the value right into the floor plan. So there's no chance of like typing in a
Hmm.
mistake or having to, hold three things at once and, hit a number and all that, right? It just does it automatically. And engineers love that because, you know, uh, less chance of mistake or deliberate, deception or whatever. And one of the things that I've been trying to do, my goal in life, is to train and certify home inspectors to be able to offer these services to engineers. And the reason I want to do that is because it makes it more cost effective for homeowners and for property owners. Um, Engineers, their time is very valuable. They're highly paid, highly educated.
Hmm.
For them to go on site to drive out there and tromp all around and kind of do the grunt work is not really good use of their time.
Mm-mm.
So what we wanted to do is to train and certify home inspectors so that they can now provide the data. They become certified, so the engineer can have confidence in them. And so I'm providing these software and services for home inspectors so that they can go out, gather all the data, give it to the engineer. The engineer can supervise it, make sure it's right, ask them to go back and look for something if it's not, correct or whatever, until the engineer is satisfied that it's right, and then he can opine on the causes and recommendations and specifications. And
That's cool.
so that's kind of a cool thing. I've got a bunch of patents, for various things that I've developed over the years, but I probably bore everybody to death to talk
Well,
about.
what's the coolest patent that you're most proud of?
They're all, it's kind of like asking which of your kids is your favorite, right? Uh, I have one that dries out soils from heaving. I have one that is a needle pile that goes down in the earth and screws in with a hole really small. I have one that fixes hold down straps from deteriorating stem walls from rust. Um,
Wow.
so,
How many
eh,
patents do you have?
oh, I don't know, five or six or so.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's more than me. It's probably more than any of my listeners. Listeners, if you have a patent, let me know. Amazing. Now, you've also written a book. Have you just have the one book or have you written multiple?
I'm working on one. It's just very close to being published. Uh,
Okay.
my first book was the same title as my website, Foundation Repair Secrets. I haven't figured out a title for my second book, and then I've got a third one that's kind of I've gotten most of the material together for it, and I'll be putting that together at some point here coming up. But the second one is basically done. I just got to go through the editing, and that always takes forever.
Throw it in AI, Bob.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Foundation Repair Secrets, is that something that listeners can order on Amazon
Yeah.
or your
Yeah.
website?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Or
Okay.
if you go to my website, it'll probably just take you to the Amazon site, I think. I don't know, something like that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, what else can you talk about regarding foundation repair moving forward for landlords in general? We talked about technology. There's other things that we could talk with about education moving forward. How does the average homeowner educate themselves? Is there any tricks of that other than reading your book, of course?
Yeah, the book is a good primer because it really
Okay.
helps you. What happens is, you don't know anything, right? And now you're sitting across the table from this guy who's been to, three seminars by his supplier, and throws out all these fancy words, and you're like, okay,
Okay.
you're totally at a disadvantage. At least by reading
Right.
the book, you'll understand what a stem wall is, you'll understand what soils are, you'll understand what settlement and heave is, you know. So you'll at least be on equal grounds if you have the problem, or if you suspect you have a problem. But again, I just wouldn't put yourself in that position because these guys, I mean, I'm going to tell you, they're highly paid. They get 10%, and most of them make between 200 and 300,000 a year. And
They're
if they
good at
don't make at
sales.
least 100,000 a year, they kick them to the curb. They get rid of them. Uh,
Wow.
and uh, frankly, these guys are very, very, very self-assured. They project very confident. All that stuff. I'm the greatest guy in the world. And they don't do it in a bombastic way. They do it in a very humble way, but they know how to manipulate people. It's just the way it is.
Sounds
Most of
like the
them,
new
not
version of used
everybody, I
car
should say.
dealer.
What's that?
I said it sounds like the new version of a used car dealer.
It kind of is like that, to be honest with you. It's very much. Now, there are a few good guys out there, but man, it's few and far between.
Right. Well, it sounds like I'm talking to one right now.
Well, I decided years ago that I just didn't think it was right to have sales guys diagnosing these things, which is why I started the engineering company. So, so
Hmm.
when we, so when the sales guy went out for the first visit and saw that, oh yeah, we got some movement going on, then he would sell engineering services and he'd be off the job. And the engineering team would come in and gather all the data and report it to the engineer. The engineer would write a report, seal it. Then the salesman would go back to the report and say, okay, this is what the engineer recommended, and this is why.
Right.
And now the homeowner can have a little better relationship with the sales guy because they know that it's not him recommending this. He's just there to help the homeowner understand what the engineer said. And
Yeah.
so they had a little better relationship. It worked out great for us. I mean, I killed all our competition in the area. If you stacked them
Of
all
course
up,
you did.
half our size. And now since I sold the company, I don't think that's really true anymore. But it was a good way of doing it, and I tried to get a lot of people to buy into that plan. I couldn't get any takers. It was, it's too
Yeah.
hard. It's too much work. We can't make any money at it. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, I made money at it. And we did good. So it can be done. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting, and I tell you, being trustworthy in your craft is, I would argue, one of the most important things. And I think you would agree with me about trustworthiness. And as a
Right.
result, now you created trust with your customer, and then a source document was made based on engineer experience, licensing, a stamp, and then you can come back and go, here's the game plan for repair based on the source document. So,
Right.
which is amazing. I mean, that's exactly, I love it. I love it. I mean, on the podcast, I've talked a lot about, if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Right.
And what you're saying is, don't trust the sales guy, hire an
Well,
engineer.
to your point, that's one of the tricks of those sales guys. They put very little in writing. They make
Yeah, well,
verbal claims that can't be verified, right? Well, that's a problem. No,
that's a
you
problem.
really want a report from an engineer that's sealed that tells you exactly what everything is, right? Then you can you've got it right there. And by the way, the engineer is held accountable by the Board of Technical Registration. Who
Right,
holds salesman accountable?
right,
His boss, to make sure he's selling enough. That's the only
right.
one. And
Yeah.
uh, the city inspectors and the state county boards, it's way over their heads. None of them can help with this.
Oh my
They're
goodness.
they're helpless. All of them.
Bob, as we come to the closing bid here, what's your number one tip for homeowners who are worried about their foundations?
Well, don't panic.
Don't panic.
Probably
Okay.
not the end of the world. I mean, it's just a crack. Cracks happen all the time. I mean, what you might do is put a piece of blue tape over it and watch it for a while. And if it
Hmm.
breaks the tape, then you know it's still moving. Or it might crinkle the tape up and close, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which it could often do. You get cyclical movements. And so, observe things for a little while. Make sure you have good drainage. You don't want water like pooling up on one side of the house and draining on the other side because then things are going to be out of whack. You want uniformity. Okay. You want to make sure that, like if you're in a wet climate, you want to make sure uh, that you have enough water around the outside on a regular basis. You can even put a soaker hose with a timer on it,
Mm,
because you don't want that water to dry out. Whereas if you were in Phoenix, Arizona, that'd be the worst thing in the world you could do. You want to move all that water away, and because
right.
it's been a desert for 300 or 400,000 years. You want to keep it dry. And if you don't keep it dry, then it goes underneath the house and it gets to the middle, and then it activates those clays, and you get heave swelling in the middle, and you get all kinds of problems. So, um, if you're a professional, if you're a property manager, or an owner of real estate, look up a good forensic engineer, go take him to lunch and pick his brain. They'll do it. They'll do
Yeah.
free lunch.
But
And
don't panic.
don't panic, and you just get to know them. And if you have a problem, then you got them in your back pocket. Hey, Harry, you remember when we went to lunch? Yeah. Well, I need you to come out and take a look at this. I think it might be a problem, right? And they'll come out, and chances are they'll say, "Oh yeah, well you got a timer box right here that's leaking. You need to fix that. You got a AC discharge right here that's pumping water in. Uh, or you got this area here that's trapping water. That's not good. They'll just probably fix your grading and drainage, and that'll be the end of it. Um, but you want the engineers, you want to know from the engineer, okay, what is our climate like here? What's the recommendations? Because it's going to be different than Houston or Louisiana than
Hmm.
Bakersfield or Inland Empire of California, right? It's going to be different, and you want that expert telling you for that area, because they know those geotechnical engineers, they know how the soils were deposited over eons of times. They know what's in the layers. They drill it all the time. They know what's in them. They know the geology of that area. You don't want to get a geotechnical engineer for Seattle for a problem in Houston. That's not going to be very helpful.
No,
You want a local geotechnical engineer that knows the geology of that area. And then they'll be able to tell you, well, here's the number one problem, and here's how you can help yourself, and here's how you can be proactive, and if you have a problem, call me and I'll come out and take a look, and that's worth its weight in gold to have somebody like that.
absolutely. Absolutely agree. No, that's fantastic. And I like knowing that you have advisors, including engineers, local to your area. I mean, many landlords are remote, and so they go, you know what, I'm in Arizona, but my rentals are in Houston or Oklahoma or Toronto, whatever, and it's a different world, and you
It really
still
is.
have to, right? It's
It
you
really is.
still have to figure out what to do where your
Where the
potential problem
property
is.
is. That's right. I mean, even in Arizona, you're going to get very dry, deserty areas like Phoenix and Tucson, but you go up into the mountains, but Prescott, Sholo, Payson, that's a very wet environment.
Very.
Very different than the Phoenix areas. I got a summer house up in Prescott. It's gets 2 feet of snow. I mean, pine trees all over the place, right? Uh, it's going to be very different than it's going to have a different dynamic entirely. And you're thinking, well, it's not that far away, yeah, but it's way
Doesn't
different,
matter.
So,
Yeah, doesn't matter
you
because the
know,
dirt's different, the weather's different, the water table's different, all of it's
yep,
different. That's amazing.
everything. Yep.
Well, Bob, if a listener is interested in contacting you, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach me at my website, foundationrepairsecrets.com. Or if you want to email me at bob@tangsel, TENGSOL.com. Feel free to give that number out to anybody that wants to contact me and has questions. I'm retired. I can take a few minutes out and talk to people. It's not a big deal, right?
Love it. Bob, thanks so much. Any parting thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, just, don't panic. That's the main thing. Don't panic.
Okay.
And you know, Abraham Maslow said, and one of my favorite sayings, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then all your problems start looking like nails, right?
Yeah.
So don't get nailed by somebody who only has a hammer.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for joining us today, Bob. Hang on.